Welcome to the Tivoli Provisioning Manager 7.1.1 Linux Patch Management demonstration. This video will be describing a common enterprise patch management scenario that will highlight Tivoli Provisioning Manager's ability to patch endpoints using a scalable distribution infrastructure. A common enterprise management scenario is patching a group of endpoints with a common operating system. For this demonstration, an administrator will patch a group of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5 endpoints after the release of a new Red Hat security patch. It is assumed that the scalable distribution infrastructure has already been configured. The next sections are configuring a connection to the Yum repository, patch acquisition, patch scan and check, and finally the remediation. Let us now review the entire process. A connection is configured between TPM and the Yum repository. This is followed by patch acquisition, which populates TPM with metadata which is published to the depot. Next, a compliance check and scan are run on a group of Linux endpoints. Finally, non-compliant endpoints are remediated with patches that are downloaded from the Tivoli infrastructure. In this scenario, Tivoli Scalable Distribution Infrastructure (SDI) is already deployed. As shown, the SDI consists of a TPM server, distribution server or depot, and endpoint with Tivoli common agent. The next step is configuring the Yum repository. From the Start Center on TPM 711 user interface, choose File Repositories as selected from the Go-To menu. The administrator now clicks the New button to configure a new repository. The administrator provides a name for the repository. The Yum repository is checked. This tells TPM we are adding a Yum repository. An IP address is provided. FTP is selected as the connection protocol, although HTTP and HTTPS are supported, as well as SSH. The root directory is entered as the root path. The credentials are provided. This is the username and password to connect using the protocol selected. Next, the administrator creates the different directories within the repository. This involves filling out a number of attributes that will uniquely identify the repository and allow the administrator to choose it later for scanning against the endpoints. After the attributes are filled in, the actual repository path will be entered as the last field. This repository path points to the final location of the files that are going to be accessed from the Yum repository. This path is on top of the root path that was supplied earlier when configuring the Yum repository. The creation of the first directory for Red Hat 5 updates on an i386 architecture is now complete. The administrator has now created all the needed directories and proceeds to saving the repository. The next step is running patch acquisition. Patch acquisition is the process of discovering available patches and importing the patch metadata from the Yum repository. From the Go-To menu, navigate to Patch Acquisition. The administrator then selects Linux as the operating system. A Yum repository is then selected and all folders are checked. Finally, the task is submitted. If a subset of folders needs to be chosen, then only those needed should be selected before pressing Submit. The Yum repository will be used to populate the TPM and depot servers with metadata. The metadata will be used in the next step in a comparison to currently installed patches on each endpoint. Once the task is completed successfully, the administrator can view the patches and filter on Red Hat version 5. Patches for different architectures can also be seen depending on a user's security permissions. Here we see the metadata that was imported by the patch acquisition process. The next step is patch, scan, and check. From the Go To menu, the administrator selects Provisioning Groups. The group, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5 Endpoints, is selected. A new compliance check and scan is created for the group. The new compliance scan and check is run. The compliance scan and check is now complete. Once the task is complete, the administrator can remediate non-compliant endpoints. We can now take a look at Dynamic Content Delivery, DCD. DCD allows for clients to simultaneously download from peers and depot servers. DCD is very effective in large environment patch management scenarios. The administrator will now access the recommendations page. The recommendations page displays the missing patches for all endpoints in the Red Hat 5 group. The recommendations are drawn from the different Yum repositories that are selected during the compliance scan in the previous step. The administrator will now approve all the patches for remediation. The task is then submitted for TPM to distribute to the Tivoli Scalable Distribution Infrastructure. The remediation is now complete. Once completed, the administrator will review to see if all the endpoints are compliant. The administrator will check the endpoints by running a compliance check. This check tells TPM to compare the missing patches from the original scan with the patches it knows are installed. If any of the patches that were remediated are not installed, they will continue to be displayed on the recommendations page. The recommendations page is empty, showing that all endpoints in the group are now compliant. The scenario is now complete. The administrator now has a working knowledge of TPM patch management, which uses the same steps and interface for patching across all platforms. This means the administrator can increase their efficiency by running patch compliance on unfamiliar platforms. Thank you for listening.